Thanks for tuning in to Written on the Edge, Season 7, Episode 39. I'm Vance Bastian, here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins.
Hello.
And we're really glad you're here with us. We're going to shake things up a bit. And because it's October, we're going to do 4 reviews of queer-themed horror films with a guest reviewer, Michael G. Williams, who will be joining us shortly. But first, Baz wanted to show off something, and he kind of just did. T-shirt. It's amazing quality. Cotton that feels like microfiber.
Yep.
Printed
This is the cheap one, because I'm a bitch.
You heard it here first. Actually, this probably was not the first time.
My husband wouldn't agree with that, though. He says I'm very costly.
So, in kicking off Horror Month, on to our review. Review, and joining us for the kickoff of our horror month is Michael G. Williams. Michael, thank you for coming back and doing this with us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
We thought what better than to have a horror writer come on and talk to us about a bunch of horrors. I mean, horror.
Why not?
Yeah.
So the film we're reviewing today is They Them, a Peacock original. It is behind a subscription paywall, so you have to at least jump on for the free week, if nothing else. But worth it. Absolutely worth it. So, IMDb tells us that a group of teenagers at an LGBTQ plus conversion camp endures unsettling psychological techniques while being stalked by a mysterious masked killer. I will freely admit, and let me be the first to say, there was a lot of trepidation in my household about watching this. My husband didn't even want to. The words conversion camp immediately turned him off. And I honestly thought the horror of this film was going to be human atrocity, just the shitty way people treat people when they don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually a slasher, though. So
yeah, I also, we were going to watch it last night, and I said, I think I'm just going to watch it tomorrow morning before I start my work day, because I just don't know that a movie about a conversion camp is the way that I need to end my weekend.
Right.
You know?
Oh, well. Well said.
Well, what did you think, Michael?
I actually ended up really enjoying it. And there are things that I did not enjoy about it. And I don't just mean the conversion camp parts. There are parts of it that I think are unnecessary. But overall, I very much enjoyed it. I especially liked the cast.
Yeah.
I like the fact, I mean, it's written by and directed. This was a directorial debut for John Logan, who is a queer horror writer. He did Penny Dreadfuls, both the Penny Dreadfuls, yeah, amongst other things. So the man does know horror. What I think is rather interesting, I wonder if because it was on Peacock, he felt the need to bring the horror, because we know he can bring horror. If you've watched any of the Penny Dreadful, the dude can bring horror.
Yep.
But I wonder if in this case he pulled back a little because it was his first directorial run, and whether or not he didn't go all out with the horror I know he can bring, because of it being on Peacock. What do you guys think?
Peacock did Queer as Folk, and they didn't shy away from any of the sex scenes.
No, but they just canceled it too.
They did just cancel it, but they didn't shy away from showing them. I think Peacock is willing to go that distance. I think they would have given him some leeway. I mean, it's fully, there are all kinds of warnings on it. Don't let your children watch it. I think Peacock.
I don't know. I think he might have felt, since it was his first directorial debut, that he might have said, maybe I better play it a little safe with this one,
I do think that he was very particular about which characters he was willing to have get killed off in a way that I appreciated. But there was, like, at no point did I really have a strong sense that everyone was equally at risk.
Right.
I was also okay with that. I was like, I don't need to see a bunch of queer kids get stabbed or whatever.
Right. No, and I get that. I think that's great. But one of the things that bothered me about it was Okay, all the non-speaking queer kids, not even one line. They didn't even really get to sing a solo part in the big song. And I'm like, why? Why are they there? Just,
To
I
round
don't
out the
get it.
film.
I
I
know,
will
but
I would like to say for listeners, and this is a not a big spoiler because it is happening throughout, but the people who are dying are the people who are running the conversion camp, not the kids. So if you're worried about kids getting hurt,
bury your gaze. Yeah.
it's that's not the case in this film. I do want you to understand that going into it.
Plus, it is also executive produced by Kevin Bacon himself. So
Right.
kudos to Mr. Bacon for putting up the bucks to do a
Mm-hmm.
story like this. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I going into it, I felt like it was probably pretty likely going to be at least decent because it's not like Kevin Bacon,
Right.
needs the money. So
Right.
right.
I feel like there must be something quality there if he was going to be signed on for it.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you
I
had said
think
that.
that I think the psychological portion of it was for queer people. We could probably see a lot more than straight people would in seeing this because of the, as the characters say at one point, the masks that they have to put on and they have to use to survive. And I think that it was rather an appropriate element that queer audiences could connect to because they would understand that to a greater degree. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of straight people who may review this film may not understand the horror of that because they've not ever had to live that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And I think that the way that I think by making explicit statements about the masks, the metaphorical masks, they build a nice little bridge for the
Mm-hmm.
straight people who are watching it to recognize that the mask that the killer wears is a representation of that same thing.
mm-hmm.
Potentially, like there's a masked killer, and the masks that we have to wear kill us.
Right.
Right.
Right. Michael, you had said there was, or there were elements you thought they showed too much. Do you want to highlight a couple of those?
I don't know. Feel free to edit this out because I don't know how spoilery we should be or want to be.
I'll
Um,
flash spoiler alert and give them a
All,
time frame to go
all,
ahead.
okay,
the only thing we should avoid is naming the killer. Anything else is fair game.
okay, no problem then. The dog, that's too much for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't ever need that. I don't need that to demonstrate that somebody is a terrible person. Uh, I there are a lot of movies that I have
Yeah,
loved
trigger
where
warning.
that has come up, and I've just been like, nope, noped out. And in
Yep.
fact, nearly just noped out on the movie right then, and probably would have had I not later the same day been planning to record a review of it. And I'm glad that I hung in there. But if I were the person editing this movie, that would not have survived the edit.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Honestly,
at what point well taken.
because Jordan had already proven to be such a crack shot, I wanted to see Jordan shoot the handle of the hammer. Yeah, that's what would have made that scene work for me,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that would have worked. Yeah,
and that would have avoided that unnecessary moment.
yeah, very, very deeply unnecessary. I myself, I mean, like full disclosure, my first novel included an animal murder getting killed, and I wrote that scene because up to that point the book had been more funny than scary,
Mm,
and I thought obviously this is the moment that people will realize no, this is actually a horror novel, and now all bets are off.
right.
Right.
And instead, one of the first emails I ever received from somebody that I did not know who read it was, um, they didn't mention that specifically, but like they didn't seem to get that there was like a point where I had intended the story to shift and that was the hinge. So it was totally ineffectual on my part. Like
Right.
I wrote it to do that and it didn't do the job. And then I forever felt bad about including that in the book to the point that I convinced my publisher to do a 10th anniversary edition of that book so that I could change that.
Was that what
And
you
when I
changed?
that's the thing I changed. So there's the
Oh,
one thing I told him afterward. I told him beforehand, there's one thing I'm going to change. You're not allowed to talk me out of it. You don't need an editor for it. I just need to rewrite like 2 paragraphs. And so when the 10th anniversary edition comes out, that dog lives. And like I have forever felt dumb about making that choice as a writer. And as a viewer, I just like can't enjoy things that include that now.
Hmm.
agreed. I have had too many pets to enjoy ever, even
And
sit
I
through
think
something
that's
like that.
there's more than enough representation of that stuff out
Yeah,
there.
yeah. There's
It's not like we ever think that he's a decent person.
no.
Right.
The movie, like the first dialogue of the movie is him emotionally manipulating the queer characters in the
Oh, I
movie.
know that opening dialogue made my stomach turn.
Yeah. I wanted to just hurl. It was it was everything that I grew up around, and there was never a moment where I was going to think he was too sympathetic.
No.
I told Vance I would be in so much trouble in that place because I couldn't keep my mouth shut.
Oh
When
yeah,
Carrie Preston was going on about you're ugly, and I'd go, "Bitch, are we talking about you now?"
Right.
yeah.
I think it's moved away from me.
I
I
just
just, Although I
yeah.
think it's interesting. The one thing that I was kind of confused about, I couldn't figure out what the lesbian or the big butch woman in the beginning when she got murdered. But then I realized that's Molly. That's the real Molly. And I'm like, it
Yeah.
took me a while to put that together. I just did right now. I'm like, oh wait, she said she was in a car out. Okay, got it. That's who the real nurse was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whoops.
Now we're gonna edit that out because you just spoiled it.
I know.
I will be taking that out of the audio version of this show.
No, you know what? Okay, you dig it out of the audio. I'll just bitmap me, and then I'll just put like white noise when I'm talking.
That's fine. All right. Well, we should give our review numbers. Michael, do you want to go first, or do you want to hear how we do it first?
I'd rather hear how y'all do it first.
All right. Baz, you or me?
You to go.
All right. They, them. Production quality 4. I thought it was beautifully produced, but, horror film, so there were dark scenes that were supposed to be dark. There was some sound balancey stuff. So, 4. Solid movie. Script screenplay, 5. I did go into it expecting a human atrocity movie, and there were human atrocities. That was not all of it, though. Some of the stuff the kids said about respecting oneself and becoming oneself are messages that everybody needs to hear. So 5 on the script screenplay. Sound lighting score 4.5. It would have been a 4, except they got Pink to sign off on using her music, and god damn, it worked. It worked so well. Art direction costuming also a 4. Again, camping in the woods, not a whole lot to do, except the kids did get to put their little individual touches on their costuming, so kudos to that. Casting 5. Everybody was perfectly cast for their roles, even the people you weren't supposed to like. Brilliantly cast. Directing 5. Like Baz said, this director knows horror, knew how to make you just cringe and duck
Cringe.
and wait for the next slash. Queer themes presented, also a 5. Got the rainbow spectrum of kids on this one. It was awesome, but also the rainbow spectrum of adults who were denying themselves. That you don't
Right.
see very often. So 5 on that. So my personal overall was 4.75.
Excellent. And just to clarify for people, remember that when we say production overall is what we think of the production as a whole. Our personal overall is what we give at the very end, which has our emotive quotient built into it. So with mine, my production overall, I was about a 4.5. I really did like it. And it's what I've come to expect from John Logan in many respects. I don't think it was quite to the level of Penny Dreadful, which, is definitely a much bigger representation of what John can bring to a story. So I gave it a 4.5. Script screenplay, I gave it a 4. I think, to your point about the dog, that's one element. There were a couple of scenes where I just kind of went, did we need to have that? So it was a 4. The sound lighting score, I gave that a 5. I thought the production levels were wonderful. You could hear everybody when they talked, even when they were whispering. The balances were good. The color spectrum was great. I liked the woodsy tones that they got out of everything. So that was really excellent. Art direction, again, 5. I thought the production level in that element was really well done. Direction, I'm going to give him a 4, only because it is his first outing. And I do know that he can bring better, but I thought he did a very good job for his first outing as a director. So I'm giving him a 4. Queer themes presented. Oh, wait.
You skipped
Did I
casting.
miss casting? I missed
You
casting, yes.
did.
Casting, 5. Because I think that, again, it was across the spectrum. I wish some of the other non-speaking characters, and I know this is a union call kind of thing, and whether you're an extra or you get your card because you had a line. But I think to have given them a little bit more would have been admirable. So on that element alone, I'm kind of like, okay, we missed a boat here somewhere. But I do like the cast. Queer themes presented, a 5, because it did cover everything. And I also liked the they them application in the story, because when it got to the point where Kevin Bacon's character was trying to use it as a weapon, it didn't quite gel, because you could see him saying the line, well, they, and he said he had to focus on the he, she binary. And to me, it was a subtle moment where I went, ha ha, there's the grammar right there, And so I liked the element, the play on they, them. So my overall is also a 4.75.
So I'm not totally sure how mine will average out. I don't know. We're gonna get there. So
Yeah.
Okay.
production quality, I give it a 5. I felt like production quality was very, very high. They did some really interesting stuff with lighting. They made really good use of like some dark environments and some very selective lighting. Particularly liked the first time that you saw the killer. And in that very first scene, when the person driving the car stops their car in the woods and you see they tap their brakes and you see the red reflection. Oh, that got me. Like that, I was,
But
sold.
but we,
So,
we saw the killer just before that with the deer.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really good stuff.
Yep.
But production quality, I felt like very excellent, like selective use of different visual features to, try to produce the effect. Script screenplay. That's the score will come up in a later thing. I'm going to give it like a 3. It was a really beautiful script, but there were just like a couple of things. Another thing that really bothered me in it was I get that they needed to make us hate the character, but the way that like we had to see somebody forcibly detransitioned and dead named repeatedly, very bothersome. That was very difficult to watch. So, and not in a like this is fun because it's scary way, but in a like this is revolting and it really happens all the time to real people way.
Right.
And I feel like there are people who might watch that and sort of
Think it's
feel
normalized.
yeah, like it does. And I feel like there are people who have experienced that who might not benefit from watching this. Um, so I'm going to give that one a 3. I feel like could have been more selective choices made. The sound lighting score, again, like sound lighting and score, I thought were all phenomenal. The sound design in this, the soundscape was beautiful. They like didn't bury us in woodsy sounds, but you could like hear exactly what you needed to hear at the right moments. The lighting, like we talked about with the brake light tapped, stuff like that was throughout it. Even at the end, like hiding in the closet and the light coming through the slats. Not only was that beautifully done, but it's one of the many homages in this to other horror movies because it's a little homage to the original Halloween. And score, I loved the score, and like the closing credits song just blew me away. It was exactly what I needed in that moment. I was very happy with it. Art direction and costuming, in some ways there's not a lot to work with just like the LL Bean catalog is evil and it lives in the woods. So but that said, the kid characters have great costuming, phenomenal work there, and especially the way that the characters are creative with their costuming in addition to the actors having been creative with their costuming. Casting, phenomenal. 5 total, 5, like 5 across the board. Directing, I'm going to give it 4.5. I felt like they did a really great job of conveying some very difficult emotional content, and I feel like the actors did a really good job of controlled performances, which is very difficult to do in horror, and it's very difficult to do especially in slasher horror. You just don't see a ton of slasher horror where they're really controlled, contained performers.
Right. They're usually in freak out mode from the beginning.
Yeah. And even among the younger cast, again, they're like these really controlled, really like just rock solid performances. People who are in their 20s just acting the hell out of something right next to Kevin Bacon, who was doing this 50 years ago, 40 years ago. So really impressed with that. I'm going to give that a 5. And queer themes presented, total 5. There's just like every part of the queer experience is represented, including kids who hate themselves for who they are and need the opportunity to learn to love who they are and need to be reminded that it's okay to love who they are, in addition to them being helped by other kids who have already accepted who they are and who are able to say to them, like, I love who I am. You've got your issues, but I love who I am. I'm just here for tickets to my show, And I just thought that was really beautifully done. Sure, early on, I was just like, I don't need these kids who hate themselves. But those kids do a lot of evolving. There's a lot of character growth. And again, in a slasher movie, you don't see a lot of character growth.
Yeah.
And especially the fact that ultimately in this movie, the secret to survival is to love yourself. That's all I need out of a queer horror movie. So that one, total 5. I don't know what that averages out to, but my personal overall rating, because of the parts of it that I didn't like, I'm gonna give it like a 3.75, maybe a 4.
Okay. All right. Excellent. I will add 2 things. I do love that Toby, the character Toby, had the homage to RBG with the, with the little chainmail collar throughout the whole thing. I'm like, bet you worked that. And the fact that Stu and he really saw each other in the end.
Yeah.
I thought that was a lovely, lovely moment.
That moment they have at the end, and then the music playing as the rest of the kids are like deciding that they're going to just live their lives and be happy. It's just like, okay, that's what I needed.
Yep. So, audiences, if you can handle a slasher that starts out showing some pretty atrocious behavior, it does have a seriously powerful message at the end and a satisfactory ending, which I've never seen in a slasher. Never, ever.
Now I'm curious to know. I'm not going to like make you go into it, but I want to know which slashers you think don't have satisfying endings. Because I agree, but there are some that I think live up to it.
We can have this offline, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have that conversation with you. Because
Yeah, no
I've
problem.
never walked away from a slasher movie happy. I've always walked away just hating people.
Oh wow!
And this is
Okay.
the first time I haven't.
I'll do that just to being in a grocery store. It doesn't have to be a slasher movie.
Right, yeah.
So, like I said, if you can, if this is a genre you can watch, this movie is worth it. Please support it with your votes, with your dollars, with your eyes. Bez, did you want to take on the reviews? The crazy
I
reviews?
want to throw something at Michael. I went through the reviews,
Sure.
and see, a big thing that's going on right now is what they call rate bombing, where a number of people will hit movies that they think are too woke, and they will just trash it in reviews. And when you read it, you're kind of going, either their logic doesn't add up, or you just kind of know you didn't even watch the fucking film. So, in that vein, I picked out a couple that I'm going to read the review to for Michael, and I kind of want him to give his comment on it. So here's one. It says, it's 3 stars out of 10, because they have 10 for IMDb. It says, "Oh, Kevin, how you've let me down. I decided to watch this movie just because Kevin Bacon was in it. Thought surely it must be good. Kevin's in it. It wasn't. 10 minutes in, it was obvious who the killer was. Question was, why? And that wasn't revealed until later, and it was so underwhelming. Was hoping for some indiscriminate killing and people running around screaming for their lives, hiding, fearing. None of it. That's what I expected to be going on in this movie."
Okay, I'm a big fan of the slasher stalks of summer camp genre, which is totally a genre of horror. And A, it's not obvious who the killer is. I thought they did a great job of it not being obvious who the killer is. B, there's a really good explanation for the killer. The killer provides us with that explanation. It makes a ton of sense in the movie. And it is very understandable and in many ways very believable. So I think that person is just full of shit. My take is that's probably somebody who watched the first 10 minutes of the movie and realized that the movie was about how people who run camps like this are evil, and decided that they weren't going to watch the rest of it because they wanted to see, as they themselves said, queer kids chased through the woods and murdered. And that wasn't what they were going to get. So that person can go to hell.
All right, so here's one that I thought was kind of okay. I watch horror movies all the time, and I've never seen one as boring and as stupid and backwards as this. I'm not even counting the gay conversion angle, which to me didn't even really play as big a role as advertised. It was just a bad movie. I'd rather watch Sleepaway Camp 3 or something. I'm sure everyone who worked on this worked so hard. I'm not trying to trash them, but wow. This one here is a sad sack of crap.
This is a person, I suspect that a lot of these boil down to it, aside from the obvious queerphobia that drove these comments. People who, the slasher stalks the summer camp genre has a reputation for not being a terribly thoughtful horror genre.
Right.
So,
I'm like,
you know, I suspect
I don't
that,
get what they're saying. Oh, it didn't have any. Bitch, it's a fucking slasher movie. What the fuck?
yeah, right. somebody who says I would rather watch Sleepaway Camp 3 is saying what I really want to watch is people get stabbed in the tits. And good for them, but that's not what this movie is. That's not what this movie
Right.
claims to be. You know,
Right.
and that's not what modern horror is. Like there was a whole time period where that was the best you could ask of horror. And you'd
Right.
get it. You'd get it in spades. You'd get it in, up to your ears. You know, you
Right.
couldn't walk into a Blockbuster video without them throwing 4 of that movie at you. But I just don't. That's not what this movie pretends to be, and I think that this is a person who is setting up a false expectation that there is something that this movie failed to live up to, when in fact this movie radically exceeded that.
I agree too, and here's my take on it. I don't know. I'm really worried about when people try to lump this in. I think of this film more along the lines of the movie Get Out, which
Sure.
was deeply psychological and really had an element of like, holy fuck, this is really fucked up and I don't need to be here, you know, kind of thing. And that's what I got out of the horror part of this story, was really the fucked upness that was going on and the fuckery going on. That was the element that really kind of made me go, whoa, this is not where I want to be, you know, kind of thing. But I liken it more to that than I would, you know, something like a summer camp slasher film, because it seemed to be set there, but I think it was because it allowed queer kids to be in one place, you know, without it putting it in a nightclub, and then we'd have the whole, you know, Pulse thing, so we don't want to go there. But, you know, I think that was the whole reason it was set there. It's not necessarily that the conversion camp was trying to be a genre. I think it just was the element of where the psychological warfare was going to go on. And to see Jordan rise up and say, no, not this time, I think that was a really welcome element. So, yeah.
I just,
all right.
you know, I don't know. I don't understand. Also, their complaint that the queer conversion camp element of it wasn't a big enough deal or present enough, or however it is that they put it. Like literally, that's the only setting you see. That's the only place.
Right.
That reviewer
That's
didn't
what
watch the
everything is about. They're just full of shit. You know.
Yeah.
These are people who want. What their goal with that review is to make other people who might have watched this not really knowing why they were watching it, and thus come away from it having learned and felt something other than just like cheap, immediate, emotional or psychological gratification. I think they're trying to dissuade those people from seeing it because they see themselves portrayed as the villains.
It's
They don't
rape
like
bombing.
that.
Yeah, it's rape bombing. That's what it is. All right. Well, I just wanted to throw a couple of them at you and see what you thought about them. We do recommend this. We think it's a great flick to watch, especially in the Halloween season that we're in fall. Thank God we're in fall. Thank God we're in fall. So I don't like summer. Thank God we're in fall. And so I'm really happy that this was our first foray into the horror stuff. So horror.
Horror.
The horror.
The horror of it all. All right, everyone. Thank you. Michael, thank you for being with us. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This was great.
And we hope you come back and do another one.
Fingers crossed.
All right, everyone. On to what won the week for Baz and I. We'll cut there. Screen wipe! That was very cool that Michael could join us.
Yeah.
I'm
totally.
looking forward to the rest of the month.
Yeah. We're gonna definitely horror it up.
Horror it up.
Horror.
Horror.
We could be Linda with the Linda.
Oh my goodness. So is that what you're on about this week? Is that what you're doing?
No. Actually, I've actually been revisiting vintage episodes. It's so funny to say vintage, and it's really not that long ago, of Will and Grace. I've actually gone back and started watching old Will and Grace episodes and
Original series.
Frasier. So I'm kind of like in my 90s mode. You know, Jay and I've watched a bit of Frasier. We've watched, you know, so yeah, that's kind of been my thing lately, is that I've been kind of rewatching some old nostalgia. I liked when they did the reboot. It's like one of the few reboots I did like was when they brought Will and Grace back, but I still I'm kind of nostalgic about when it first came out, and I still like watching those episodes because that foursome. They were just as tight with their comedy as Lucy, Ricky, Fred, and Ethel. You know, so I've just always thought of them as being that top level kind of team. So yeah, so that I'm on about that, and then the other thing lately that I've kind of been on about, there's a guy who I'm recommending from the YouTuber, and his name is Zach the Russian, and he is a Russian guy who got out of Russia at the beginning when things started going down. His mom said, "Here's some money. You need to get out. Don't even think of coming back home." Because he's from like the eastern part of Russia, like the real rural part. And but he got out, and he's been doing a lot of vlogging from Tbilisi, Georgia, which is where he is now. Although he's saying that because so many Russian men are coming into Georgia, he's thinking it could get a little more tense towards Russians. So he's thinking of actually relocating somewhere else now. But he did one thing. He just did a video, and I'll put it here so people can see it. He did a video where he burned his military card or papers that every male, when they reach 16, they have to go to the military office and they get their first paper and it's signed. That's when they do the physical exam and give you a categorization. And so he had his with him, but now that he's been living in Georgia from February on, he decided this was the time to burn it. And so it was a very cathartic moment for him. And it was actually kind of ominous in a weird way, because he went up on the high mountainsides outside of Tbilisi, which can get really windy. He was trying to light with a lighter his it looks kind of like a military passport in a way. And he was trying to burn it, and the wind was so strong he couldn't get it to light. And he even made a comment saying, maybe this is special paper and you can't burn it. But he eventually got it going, and it did burn. So he felt quite cathartic moment for him. And it was kind of nice to see him say, yeah, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not being a part of that whole thing. I'm out. And so that part of it was really kind of nice to see. So, yeah, that's what I'm on about this week.
Nice.
You?
I've been reconnecting with people in person. I got called a super
What's
dodger.
that like? No.
I know. I was called a super dodger because for almost all of COVID, because I was taking care of my parents, I really, really, really retreated into the safety of the four walls.
I get it.
And so, starting last week, which I know I talked about the theater we went to, I started meeting back up with neighbors who, you see through windows and wave at, but haven't actually talked to in 2 years. Our next door neighbors moved in a year ago. I only just learned their names today. I mean, we've been waving at each other, but we actually stopped and chatted today in person. I'm about to go have lunch with the couple that stood up at my husband's and my wedding ceremony. So that's what I'm on about. I'm reconnecting in person, no screens between me and the other people.
Red line through it.
Red line through the screens. And it's been nice. It's like a piece of life you sometimes don't realize is missing until you start doing it. That's it. It's simple. Nothing extravagant.
That works for me. Yeah, I'm all about that. Ever since I gave up the whole social media bullshit, it's like, oh man, yeah, this is what my life was like before.
I know. You forget that staring at a screen is not living.
Right, exactly. What is it? How did Nia Vartalo say in Connie Clay? Here's the dinner and a show. Dinner and a show. Bringing back our Connie and Carla. Anyways, so who won the week for you?
Hollywood's television producers. Because I hadn't noticed it until this week when I really clued into something. So we were watching Quantum Leap, the new one, because I wanted to support the fact that they had an Asian American lead, which I was awesome about. But then we got to the computer lab and sort of the team that's supporting it, and Mason Alexander Park is in charge of the computer lab. Just bossing it up. I was like, yes. And then we watched another show, and there was just lesbian neighbors who happened to show up at a cookout. They were just there and present. They weren't they weren't main cast. I don't even think they had names. But they were obviously
No name lesbians over there.
they were obviously just part of the neighborhood. And so I started paying attention to the fact that television is including us, even though they can't necessarily change all of their primary cast. We're starting to appear as just people in town.
Right.
Oh, I love it. It makes me happy. It makes me feel good that we're being seen and just recognized as part of life.
Right.
So yeah, Hollywood television producers, you won my week.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to give a controversial winner of the week. My winner of the week is actually Vladimir Putin. And I'm going to say it's because that motherfucker is doing what the czars did and is going to burn Russia to the ground with his random czarist regime stupidity. So, keep going, Vlad. I'm right behind you. Burn that bitch to the ground. You pissed off the Russian mothers and the ethnic mothers. Shit is going down. That was not a wise move, and you should have learned that from history. And your big old smart, stable genius brain that Trump admires so much, bitch, please. You've done fucked it up. So, yeah, he won my week for being the biggest dumbass on the planet. Never thought I'd say those words.
Yeah, right?
That was like me agreeing to Nancy Reagan saying, just say no, 2 episodes back.
I know, you're scaring me.
I know. Anyways.
Do we need to send you to Camp Whistler?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. Because this is just a sidebar note to our review, but I watched that whole thing, and the whole thing I'm watching, I'm going, yeah, I would be in so much trouble there. I could not keep my mouth shut. I could not keep my... When Carrie President did her whole little spiel, I'm like, bitch, are we talking about you?
Right.
I would have been in so much trouble in that place.
All right.
The horror would have been all my direction. I would have terrorized that joint. Anyways.
With bright colors on.
Right.
All right. Any final words of wisdom?
No, that's it. That's all I got.
All right. Written on the Edge is produced by Real Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. If you enjoy learning about new artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.